Shall we start?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, please manage the session. Thank you.
So can you go ahead and start, or we should wait?
I think, yeah, now, yeah, you can start. Maybe
Okay.
several attendants will join, but yeah, you can start. Thank you very much.
Okay. Oh, welcome to Eight Drinks for Special Session 5. The Special Session 5 title is Resource Circulation Strategy for Carbon Neutrality. And as you know, the carbon neutrality and circular economy or resource circulation is one of the very hot topic nowadays. And I hope these special sessions will provide good academic knowledge, and you also share your knowledge and experiences among the international experts as well as from audience. And we have three excellent speakers for today. And the first speaker from Korea, and Mr. Yongho Yoo, and another speaker from Japan, and Madoka Yamamoto, and Roita Yi, and our third speaker from Chungnam Kim from France in European cases. So I hope you enjoy our special sessions. And then we'll go ahead and start the first speaker from you. But unfortunately, Mr. Yu just recently promoted and changed his position in the Minister of Environment. So, but he made a slide in records. So we'll play his presentations by recording, and I don't think you will have any problem. But any questions, any any comments, you're welcome to ask me or send an email to you. So he's happy to answer any questions regarding his presentation. So let's go ahead and start his presentations for about 20 minutes. Let me share his slide presentations.
Good afternoon. I'm Yongho Yoo, Senior Deputy Director of the Ministry of Environment. Thank you for inviting to the international conference to discuss the resource circulation strategy for carbon neutrality. I would like to also thank to the Korean Society of Waste Management and Professor Jang Yong-Chul of Chungnam National University. Today, I will give a presentation on the Korea circular economy towards a carbon neutral society based on the K Circular Economy Action Plan. Table of contents for presentation. First, background of the policy. Second, the basic direction. And finally, the details of the specific circular economy implementation action plan. Its background. In the past, the economic paradigm since the Industrial Revolution has been a linear economy. Each country has led economic growth based on mass production and consumption, thereby creating jobs and revitalizing the economy. However, in this linear economic structure, the economic circulated, but the material products did not circulate. Mass production and mass consumption inevitably caused resource depletion and a large amount of waste. It's like a 100-meter sprint without a long-term perspective. Now, not just for ourselves, but for future generations, we must shift from 100 meters.
Excuse me, Professor Yong-Chul. Can you hear me? We can't hear the voice of movie.
Professor Jang, we cannot hear the sound. So could
Oh,
you
sorry,
check
sorry,
it?
sorry. I
Implementation
muted. Sorry.
along with the enactment of its Carbon Neutrality Act. Shortly after, we established the Circular Economy Action Plan for robust implementations. And the basic direction. The vision for 2050 to be achieved through the transition to a circular economy is as follows. Zero waste, realize carbon neutrality by 2050, and complete transition to a circular economy society. By minimizing the consumption of natural resources and maximizing the utilization of circular resources, we're maximizing the efficiency compared to the input of resources, thereby minimizing the new generation waste. As a specific implementation course, we plan to raise the waste landfill rate from the current 6.1% to 1% by 2030, and eliminated waste from landfills by 2050. In addition, the amount of greenhouse gas emissions in the waste sector will be reduced from 1.7 billion tons in 2018 to 4.4 million tons in 2050. Finally, the recycling rate of resources will also increase from 18.6% in 2019 to 99% by 2050. For the transition to a circular economy, Korea has prepared detailed implementation tests for each phase, subject, and item. First, we plan to strengthen the management of the entire resource circulation process. Korea plans to expand the use of raw materials that help producers recycle resources, manufacture products so that they can be easily recycled from the beginning of production, and encourage consumers to increase consumption of eco-friendly products. In addition, we support the revitalization of disuse, recycle, and the manufacturing sectors. Second, Korea prepares to implement a circular economy for each entity. Korea will guarantee consumers' rights so that they can reuse and use products and encourage business to conduct eco-friendly management. In addition, local government must establish a circular economy system that matches the characteristics of each city. Third, we will establish a circulation system for each item. Korea will expand and manage the designation of valuable items as resources among waste. In particular, we plan to focus on management so that the circular use of the 7 items highlighted in the European Circular Economy Implementation Plan can be expanded. Based on this, Korea plans to prepare a circular economy scenario as part of the 2050 carbon neutrality scenarios and achieve economic value creation and carbon emission reductions. For your information, the circular economy could generate 4.5 trillion of additional economic output and is estimated to reduce 48% of global carbon emission and 37% of energy consumption in EU by 2030. And the next is Circular Economy Action Plan. The first step is to use raw material considering resource circulation. Companies will develop and commercialize innovative materials that can replace plastic, such as aerogel and bioplastics, and the government will support research and development in these areas. In addition, Korea will increase the use of recycled materials at production stage. Next is the introduction of a circular manufacturing process. From the moment the product is designed, we plan to use less resources and make it easier to recycle. The government will minimize the amount of plastic raw material input and minimize unnecessary packaging space in the future, so that eco design can be established in products. In addition, Korea will expand smart green factories and industrial complexes. Furthermore, the use of rubber-free PET bottle and paper-only packaging will gradually expand for reducing resource use and strengthening circulation availability. For example, 22 bottled water companies in Korea signed an MOU with the Ministry of Environment in March of last year. And based on this, they are launching rubber-free PET bottles. And next is eco-friendly consumption. Store without disposable cups, zero waste store, and refill modes should be the items everyone could see anywhere in everyone's daily life. We will continue to operate programs to create an enabling environment where these items are widely used. And recycled products will be more purchased in the public sector. When it's come to consumption, the government encourages consumers and business to reuse their products. The government is planning to improve regulatory measures so that companies can expand the remanufacturing of electronic products and parts, and expand the installation of upcycle centers in the whole country. Reuse or remanufacturing is a kind of recycling, and it's a kind of efficient recycling method that can maintain the original characteristics of the product, rather than recycling the product through process such as crushing and washing. The government ensures that the waste generated after use can be easily recovered and recycled. The government supports the technological development of related companies so that they can return urban waste back to resources such as recycled refined oil. In addition, Korea plans to establish in advanced facilities and systems that can recycle waste-based batteries for electric vehicle, and waste solar panels, which are expected to occur a lot in the future. The government also strengthens consumer rights related to circular use. The government improved eco-labeling such as carbon footprint and environmental labeling. In addition, for enhancing the life of repairs, we will launch a legislation process guaranteed to consumers the right of repairs. This will be linked to products life cycle assurance, software upgrades, and parts for repair. The government also provides institutional support to the problems that environmental companies are experiencing due to various regulations. It is a regulatory sandbox in the circular economy sector. Throughout this, government plans to enable companies in the environmental sector to quickly check regulations related to the circular economy, obtain regulatory inspection for verification, and obtain temporary permits. Local governments that are responsible for disposing of domestic waste should strengthen the recycling system for each city. The government plans to legislate the principle that local governments dispose of local waste within the region, will also minimize incineration and landfilling. In addition, local government will promote circular economy projects according to regional characteristics, and the government will provide support when local government builds smart green cities combined with IT technologies. Thank you for listening. And the circular economy goes beyond simply protecting the environment and will become a new growth engine for the future. As the transition to a circular economy has become an essential task, not an option, the Ministry of Environment will do its best to establish a circular economy in Korea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the Korea Circular Economy Action Plan was announced last December. So it's about 3 months ago. The Ministry of Environment announced that the action plan toward the carbon neutral society. So you can get some idea on his presentations. So now we're going to move on to second presenter, medium and long-term scenarios for achieving net zero greenhouse emissions by 2050 in the material cycles and waste management sector in Japan. So now we'd like to welcome Ms. Yamamoto and Mr. Yi. So please go ahead and start your presentations.
Before our presentation, could Mr. Yamada from Ministry of Environment of Japan have a word, please, Mr. Yamada?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon from Japan. My name is Koji Yamada, Management Division, Ministry of the Environment, Japan. I am pleased to participate in the important and timely meeting. In this presentation, we would like to share the formulation of the net zero scenarios by 2050.
Okay.
In the material cycles and waste sector. In 2020, Japanese Prime Minister declared that Japan would aim to reduce greenhouse gases emission to net zero by 2050. In the material cycle and waste sector, it's essential to urgently consider emission reduction measures to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2050. So the Ministry of the Environment has formulated a scenario for achieving the goal by setting multiple scenarios according to the strengths of the countermeasures. So today, we would like to share the scenarios. So
Okay.
I will invite Ms. Yamamoto to introduce the concrete contents of the scenarios. Please, Ms. Yamamoto.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We will make a presentation on the scenarios as Mr. Yamada has mentioned. I'm Masato Yamamoto, and in the same room, we will be presenting the slides. We are from Pacific Consultants, and we have been conducting the study for the Ministry of Environment of Japan. This is the context, background objectives, role of the material cycles and waste management sector for achieving net zero, 3 priority areas for action and basic approach, 4 scenarios for analysis, 5 measures in priority areas, 6 results, 7 implications, 8 next steps. For background and objectives, Mr. Yamada has already said, so I will skip the slide. On the left is the Japan's total GHG emissions from fiscal year 2019. That's 1.2 billion tons CO2, and waste sector is 3.3%, which is 14 million tons CO2. On the right, you can see the waste sector's GHG emissions, and you can see that about 80% is CO2 emissions. And also from the bar chart on the bottom, you can see that incineration make up around 80%. This comes mainly from waste plastic and also waste oil, incineration of waste plastics and waste oil. Next slide. There are 2 main goals of sector for achieving net zero. The first one is to improve resource productivity based on 3 R's and renewable concept. The material cycles and waste management sector has been helping to reduce GHG emissions and energy consumption through the 3 R's and heat recovery, and has further potential to do so. Secondly, this sector is one of the major sources of non-energy related GHG emissions, so the achievement of net zero emissions in this sector will be crucial for net zero overall in Japan. Thirdly, the potential exists for further reductions in resource and energy consumption by increasing the resource efficiency of durable goods. Fourthly, the 3 R's and renewables concept is part of crucial strategy to achieve carbon neutral society. This includes minimizing incineration and landfill of carbon-containing materials, reducing energy consumption in production process, shifting to the use of biomass-based materials, as well as using renewable energy in waste treatment processes. Lastly, implementation of 3 R's is an important place to start, as biomass procurement involves constraints in terms of sustainability. The second role of the sector is decarbonization of material cycles and waste treatment systems. Firstly, the sector emits waste-derived GHGs, mainly from the incineration energy recovery of fossil-derived waste in the landfill of biomass waste. To reduce these non-energy related GHG emissions, the sector must bolster its 3 R's efforts, opt for low-emission waste treatment methods, and shift toward the use of biomass-based materials for manufacturing. Secondly, the reduction of energy-related CO2 emissions from the waste treatment requires various efforts, including utilizing energy from waste, reducing energy consumption, and shifting to the use of renewable energy in waste treatment processes. Thirdly, for sampling and other reasons, incineration cannot be completely eliminated, so actual GHG emissions from this sector cannot achieve zero. So therefore, fourthly, CCUS becomes important to cancel out the GHG emissions and even achieve negative emissions, since the incineration exhausted gases include biomass-derived CO2. Lastly, it is an urgent matter to devise and present strategies to achieve carbon neutrality in the sector by 2050. Based on these rules and principles, we set 3 strategies and priority areas for achieving net zero emissions in 2050. Based on the 3 R and renewable concept, we set 3 strategies. First, decarbonizing the entire life cycle materials through resource circulation. Second one is develop waste treatment systems contributing to regional decarbonization. The last one is decarbonize waste treatment facilities and vehicles. For the first one, we focused on materials with high non-energy related GHG emissions. For the second strategy, we focused on treatment method with high regional reduction potential. For the last strategy, we'll focus on steady reduction of emissions and efforts to avoid locking in high emission structures. This figure shows the basic approach of the sector toward carbon neutrality in 2050. The vertical axis is GHG emissions, or for the bottom part is reduction effects of the sector. The GHG emissions from the sector, which is shown navy, this navy part is the GHG emissions of from this sector. This will be reduced through 2R, reduce and reduce, material recycling, chemical recycling, and use of biomass in materials, as well as GHG reduction technologies. If you look at the bottom part, the orange bar, this shows the waste power generation and heat utilization. This will expand for time being, but this estimated GHG reduction effects will decline with the progress of net zero emission from electricity. So the orange bar it decreases with time. If you look at the blue part, this is the GHG reduction effect in other sectors by recycling. And this box becomes larger in 2030, but disappears in 2050. We wrote here, the sector will contribute to decarbonizing other sectors through replacing used raw materials by recycled materials. However, the materials industry may achieve decarbonization in some other ways. Therefore, we did not include these reduction effects in the scenario analysis. So, as I said before, GHG emission will not be zero in 2050 because of the incineration and sanitary purposes and so forth. CCU has become important here to cancel out the GHG emissions in 2050. These are the scenarios we have set. There are 6 scenarios beside BAU. The first one, BAU scenario, we assume the current measures will remain unchanged until 2050. The next 4 scenarios, we assumed measures according to the priority areas I mentioned, but the strength of the measures are different. It gets more, the strength becomes more if you go down the scenario. And the last 2 scenarios, CCU is considered only in the last 2 scenarios. I will explain about measures assumed in each priority area. For detailed assumptions on intensity of the measures in each scenario, please have a look at later slides attached to this presentation file, which I will not explain now. This shows priority area 1. We assumed measures for waste plastics. The basic concepts are reduce, reuse, separate as much as possible, material recycling and feedstock recycling to minimize incineration and final disposal, and promote bioplastics. The 2 bar charts on the bottom shows the volume waste plastic by treatment method and the composition of waste plastic on the right for the advanced innovation scenario. You can see that incineration is decreasing with time from the left bar chart, and from the right bar chart, you can see that biomass based plastics is increasing with time of these purple and green ones. For waste oil, we assumed material recycling and biomass conversion. And these 2 pie charts shows the current treatment method of waste oil. Left is for waste lubricating oil, and its major treatment method is energy recovery. And on the right is the waste solvent, and the major treatment method, the current method is incineration and energy recovery. We also assumed material recycling and biomaterial conversion for disposable diapers. And for waste paper and synthetic fiber scraps, we assumed material recycling, reduce feedstock recycling. And also we assumed several measures for scrap tires as well. This is for measures in priority area 2. We assumed organic waste management, waste energy utilization, power and heat, and CCUS. The bar chart here shows a composition of newly built incineration facilities from 2031 and beyond. As you can see, the capacities of incineration facilities becomes larger if you go, when you go down the scenarios. And also, methane adoption of methane fermentation become larger as you go down the scenario. This slide shows measures we assumed in priority area 3. For municipal waste treatment facilities and waste collection vehicles, we assume these measures. For incineration, human waste treatment, and other treatment facilities. And we also assume some measures for waste collection vehicles. And at the moment, GHG emissions are large from incineration facilities and human waste treatment facilities and waste collection vehicles. So more measures are assumed in those facilities and vehicles. The slide shows the result of scenario analysis. You can see that this is BAU. This is expanded planning. So the expanded planning scenario isn't good enough in terms of GHG reduction. On the right-hand side, you can see bar charts of the GHG emissions by scenario in 2050. You can see from the scenario with CCU, you can see that at this cancel out this emission and so forth. This slide shows GHG reduction effects for several scenarios. This is historical and expand planning scenario, innovation scenario, and so forth. BAU is just the top line, and this shows how much is reduced from these measures. So you can see that green is waste plastics, so measures for waste plastics has a large potential for reducing GHGs, as well as waste oil and energy-related CO2. And this dark gray shows the reduction of GHG from CCUS. Here are implications overall. The material cycles and waste management sector can reach net zero or even negative emissions by 2050 by deploying CCUS to the maximum extent possible at waste treatment facilities. Secondly, measures based simply on extending existing plans and policies are insufficient, while implementing technological and institutional measures or concerned parties should work together to address the challenge with greater ambition. Thirdly, under the basic objective of reducing GHG emissions as much as possible, the material cycles of the sector should implement stronger 2Rs measures and further advance efforts in priority areas. Lastly, the scenarios should be updated based on changes in prospects for the materials and manufacturing industries. Some implications from priority areas. For priority area 1, firstly, for waste plastic, it's important to focus on promotion of material recycling, feedstock recycling, as well as improvement with raw materials and materials shift to use of biomass plastics. For waste oil, it will be necessary to initiate efforts on material recycling of waste oil, such as lubrication oils and waste solvents, learning from other countries that are on the forefront of such efforts, and so forth. I'll skip several points. From priority area 2, waste treatment facilities have long service lives once built. So it's crucial and important to encourage the construction of low carbon facilities at early planning stages in order to reduce energy consumption in long run. Secondly, in scenarios to significantly reduce GHG emissions from this sector, the unit calorific value of waste treated is expected to decrease over time due to significant progress in the PR, such as the use of separated waste plastics. So energy balance is expected to improve through the adoption of integrated treatment technologies such as methane fermentation, as well as consolidation of treatment facilities. Implication from priority area 3, regarding electricity used in waste treatment facilities and waste collection transport vehicles, significant GHG emission reduction can be expected in this sector based on the introduction of renewable energy plus CO2 emission factors for electricity tending towards zero. These are next steps. We have done the first scenario analysis, and from now on, consideration or start thinking about how to implement measures, as well as keep updating the scenarios along with institutional development and promotion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And do you have another presenter, Mr. Lee, or you okay?
He's okay. Thank you so much.
You're okay. 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 That's excellent presentations from Japan's efforts toward the carbon neutrality in material cycle and waste management sector. Thank you very much. And now we're gonna move on to the last presenter, the strategy of sustainable solid management in EU toward the carbon neutrality from France. Professor Chungnam Kim, he's a professor at the University of Technology of Troyes. Please go ahead and present. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon and good morning here in France. Good afternoon in Asian countries. This is Chungnam Kim in University of Technology of Troyes in France. Firstly, I want to thank to the session chair, Professor Jang, Yong-Chul, and program organizers for giving me this great opportunity. As you can see here, today I want to share and introduce the European project and strategy on waste management and carbon neutrality. For the first part, I want to show some data and statistics about waste and carbon emission in Europe and OECD countries. So, this figure shows the waste data in OECD countries in 2019. The OECD countries generate the waste from 315 kilogram to 809 kilogram of waste per person per year. The OECD countries' average waste amount is about 538 kilogram per person per year. In the OECD countries, the United States was the highest, was the most waste generation countries. One American person generate 809 kilogram, in Denmark 781, and New Zealand 727 kilogram waste. Instead of those countries, the Eastern Europe countries and also Asian countries such as Poland, Czech, and Korea, Japan generate much less waste, from 315 to 359 kilogram per person. Also, this graph shows the waste generation data from 2000 to 2019 in OECD countries. Some countries' data was increased and decreased during this period, but the average waste generation amount in OECD countries was not big change. From 546 kilogram per person in 2000 and 538 kilogram per person in 2019. If we check the average gross domestic product (GDP) in OECD countries, it was $24,635 US per person in 2000. In 2019, it was $46,110 US per person. So the GDP was increased about 87%. So waste is stable and GDP was increased. So from this data, we can see the economic and waste decoupling pattern also. Let's see the EU waste data. The average municipal waste per capita in the EU in 2020 was 505 kilogram. It was 506 kilogram in 2005. Like OECD countries, the waste data was not big changed from 2005 to 2020. I think the European also tried to reduce the waste when the GDP was increased from 27,000 US dollar to 34,000 US dollar in 2020. Also, from here also you can see economic and waste decoupling from EU waste and GDP data. This table and figures show the waste treatment method in EU countries. In 1995, the most waste was treated with landfill method, which was 61% of the total. Incineration was 15%, and material recycling 12%, and composting was just 7% of total. During after 15 years, it was changed significantly. The landfill of waste was decreased from 61% to 23%, while incineration 15% to 27%, material recycling 12% and 30%, was composting 7% to 80% increased. I didn't check but I think the other OECD countries have similar change like this. I saw the Japanese data also is it is a little bit similar data. Also, this graph shows same change graph. Landfill amount was decreased, and incineration and recycling and composting amount of waste was increased. This figure shows global greenhouse gas emission by sector. Global greenhouse gas emission continued to rise at the time when they need to be rapidly falling. To effectively reduce emission, we need to know where they are coming from, which sectors contribute the most, how much we use this understanding to develop effective solutions and mitigation strategies. Here we look at the breakdown the emission by sector. To prevent severe climate change, we need to rapidly reduce global GHG emission. The world emit around 50 billion tons of GHG emission each year. So from here, energy sector is the most significant contributor, about 73%. And then agriculture and forestry and land use has 18.4% and industry 5.2%. This is the direct industry processes. Here also waste contribute 3.2% in total GHG emission. Where our greenhouse gas come from? This chart shows the breakdown of total greenhouse gas by sector. Here we see the electricity and heat production are the largest contributor of global emissions. This is followed by transport, manufacturing and construction, and agriculture. But this is not the same everywhere. If we look the United States case, for example, transport is much larger contributor than the global average. In Brazil, the majority of emissions come from agriculture and land use change. The EU data also shows very similar percentage, what I showed you before. The energy sector, including the transportation part, the most significant contributor as the previous slide. In 1990 and 2018 is not so big change. The EU moves toward circular economy and carbon neutrality. Many people already know about the European Green Deal to overcome the environmental issues, climate change and global warming. The European Green Deal will transform the EU into a modern, resource efficient and competitive economy, ensuring no net emission of GHG emission by 2050, like Korea and Japan. Before slide. Economic growth decoupled from resource use, no person and no place left behind. The president of the European Commission and also vice president of the European Commission said the European Green Deal is our new growth strategy. It will help us cut emission while creating jobs. Also, we propose green and inclusive transition to help improve people's well-being and secure a healthy planet for generations to come. With this important message from President and Vice President, the European Green Deal will decarbonize the energy sector, also renovate buildings to help people cut their energy bills and energy use, and support industry to innovate and to become global leaders in the green economy, and roll out cleaner, cheaper, and healthier form to private and public transport. So here also, currently the European industry uses only 12% recycled materials, but by 2050, this percentage will be significantly increased. When I prepared this slide, I checked the European project related to circular economy and carbon neutrality and waste. There were many projects. So I just summarized some important projects here. One project was about textile waste. So they tried to recover and recycle textile waste. And another project was about also building materials recycling. So they tried to develop tools for circular building material recovery, recycling, and assessment. And also one project was about renewable energy waste. So this project was about photovoltaic waste. So from photovoltaic waste, they try to recover valuable materials. Also, they want to get benefit for the circularity of the PV industry. And also, this is the also construction waste, also urban waste recycling project. Also, they suggest some new collection method and recycling and method. And also, yeah, here bio-based raw materials and eco-friendly packaging design adapted to these plastic to improve collection and recycling. Also, this project tried to increase recyclability and enable to robust after-use plastic economy. And then also some projects were about bio-waste, recycling, and also they try to reduce the impact of waste collection and recycling. Also, if you see France's case, so France also introduced national low carbon strategy in 2015. So it outlined the approach to be adopted to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It set in motion the transition to a sustainable low carbon economy. It facilitates the management of policies for reducing greenhouse gas emission by public decision makers. So up to date, France tried to reduce GHG emission from 552 million tons in 1990, and then 992 million tons in 1913-14. So a little bit decreased. We can see here from this figure. Also, the France has the target carbon neutrality by 2050, net zero emission. So yeah, I want to skip this one. So I want to focus on one slide about waste part in the GHG emission reduction target. So the waste disposal sector currently account about 3% of French national GHG emission. The strategy aims to reduce the sector's emission by 37% by 2030 compared to 2015, and by 66% by 2050. It's not zero, it's 66% by 2050 compared to 2015. So yeah, and so finally, I want to suggest some further studies. So when I prepared this presentation, I checked many projects and many studies. So there were many carbon footprint analysis assessment in waste treatment, recycling and recovery and reuse and management system. So I think we should continue this kind of carbon footprint analysis assessment for specific waste treatment process and more specific recycling process. Also, when the recycled materials are reused for raw material, so this kind of thing should quantify well. Also, many material flow analysis studies were conducted. Also, waste flow analysis in waste treatment management system should be conducted. Also, we can focus on more specific waste flow, plastic flow and food waste flow and specific waste flow study we should continue. Also, conducting this waste flow analysis So we should also quantify the CO2 emission flows together. Also, I showed some projects. They showed, okay, they developed new recycling process and collection process, but the quantification were very weak. So quantification studies of avoided and saved GHG emissions are required. How much GHG emission are avoided and saved from 1 ton of PET bottle recycling, and when upcycling and downcycling, how much CO2 emissions were saved, avoid. This kind of thing should be more pay attention, and we should quantify each factors. So this kind of carbon footprint factor should be applied for policy and future plan to reduce CO2 emission from energy sectors, waste sector. Also, we need more policies, incentives, and also research funding. So for example, small medium company, they try to reduce the CO2 emission for their new product and process and system. Also, they reduce some amount of CO2 emission, but there's not many incentives about that. There is the CO2 reduction law symbol and certificate. So that is not enough. So I think we should more things than certification. So we need to continue green and eco image of the company, and we need to promote this kind of aspect for the companies. Yeah. So that's all my presentation, and thank you for your attention. If you have any question, and I want to answer for your question.
Oh, thank you very much. We have excellent presentations from France for the European side, and now we're gonna turn to question and answer sessions. So we have about 25 minutes that we can talk, and if you have any questions on the chatting or Q&A sections, you can put your questions. So let me go ahead and check. You have any comments, questions? You're welcome to the presenters. Let me go ahead and start my questions. I think Professor Kim, you have an excellent the overview of waste management trend and carbon net zero like directions and efforts. As you mentioned on slide 20 and on 19, you suggest some material flow analysis and carbon footprint assessment, and also life cycle concept of products by recycling to evaluate avoided and saved greenhouse gas emissions. So more specifically, I think there are some softwares available to assess avoided or saved greenhouse gases. Example like ShimaPro or Gabi, but in terms of waste recycling, would you be able to like recommend good life cycle assessment software that we can use? Like I know the United States, there is a US warm model, one of the old and very easy to use model. But do you have any experiences or any recommendation on evaluate, avoided or saved greenhouse gas in waste sector or some product,
Yeah, okay, that is a good question. So yeah, there are many carbon footprint calculation software. So OpenLCA, also Gabi and EcoInvent, we can use that. But for me, I think from the EcoInvent data, so we can make our own calculation model. So I said the system boundary and process are all different in different countries and different process systems. So we cannot use directly from other countries factors. So maybe we can make our own calculation model. So I'm doing like that.
Okay.
So sometimes I'm using other software, but I'm usually download EcoInvent data, and then I can get the CO2.
Right. More like a
value.
country specific or like a size specific or study specific. You make us some kind of a boundary, system boundary, and input data and output. Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So also the waste flow analysis studies. So what I know is that the important thing is where it comes from the most CO2 emission in waste flow and waste collection and treatment and recycling. So we should know that first, and then we should try to reduce each process and each stage. So that is important study. Yeah, what I proposed.
And I have another question for the Miss Yamamoto. Is she in? Is she on right now? Oh, Miss Yamamoto? Or Mr. E? Mr.
Yes,
E?
we are here.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. You have a good and excellent presentation on the waste management and carbon neutrality, but waste plastic issue is one of the key priority area if we really reduce CO2 emissions, right? And also your country heavily depending on waste incineration. So you have a big portion of the combustions for municipal solid waste. But I think this is almost like I've never think about that much on waste oil. And you said like lubricant oils and solvents, but because I understand the first priority is a waste plastic to reduce carbon emissions, but I never think about very heavily on waste oil. So I know you have a very detailed data on waste oil, but your waste oil also kind of you brought like lubricating oil, lubricants, and or like solvent, but it's kind of very broad definition. So would you talk about a little bit detail on why second most or like a very priority item that you select waste oil?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a very good and important question, but I feel a bit difficult to answer you immediately. So could you summarize your question? So let me try. You asked us to explain a bit about the details of the generation of waste oil, no?
Yeah, I mean, I want to know, waste plastic is a
Yeah.
the heavy, largest fraction in municipal solid waste or like solid waste ministry. But I never heavily thought about some waste oil, which might not, largest fraction or large contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions in my experience or in my country experiences. So I want to a little bit know about waste oil and what kind of oil we are talking about. I really do not have some specific, that one, right? So is it largest like some kind of one of the larger a fraction of greenhouse gas contributions, or so you're talking about 1,000 tons, so about 650,000 tons, and okay, so you have lubricating oil and solvent, okay. And what about greenhouse gas emissions to burn or to combust or process?
The waste oil in
Right.
fiscal 2019 fiscal year,
Right.
from waste oil, it's about 9.7 million ton CO2 from waste oil.
Okay.
And
Okay.
It's just over 1/4 of CO2 emissions
Okay. Okay. Okay.
from incineration.
Okay. So I also need to check in Korea case, and I never thought about some big contribution from waste oil, because in Korea you have lubricating oil, and we usually recycle. That's a lubricating oil by solvent separations and some refinery, and then we reuse it rather than just burning or combust it. So that's why I was kind of a little bit surprised you kind of pick or select the second largest waste item that you want to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, because usually solvent as well, also solvent and lubricating oil, pretty much they are recycled, commonly recycled, recovered, and refined oil, and just keep recycle in a circular way. But you kind of you incinerate as a energy maybe auxiliary sources maybe. Okay, that's good to know.
I'm Koji from Ministry of the Environment, Japan.
Go ahead.
Can I speak?
Sure. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes, and thank you, Chair. You are right. In Japan, the industrial oil is go to incineration plant, not recycled. So you say that Korea and European countries with industrial oil to recycle. Yeah, so we have to change the waste oil go to the recycled in the future. So we have to challenge in this area. Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, the lubricating oil is one of the items the extended producer responsibility items in Korea. So when you make lubricant oil for car or automobile, you make sure about 70%, 80% you recycle, and then otherwise they get a penalty, and they have to pay some find. So we have a very long history of lubricating oil, used lubricating oil recycle system under EPR system. And then solvent also usually, you know, we recycle waste solvent by evaporation, distillation techniques, and so rather than just you know, burning it, we usually recover and we use it. Okay, and I think that there are some questions in the Q&A sessions. Miss Madaka, may I know you using what kind of model to predict net zero 250? So
Here, may I show you the diagrams how to
sure.
but in Japanese.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
But while we try or still try to explain you. Just wait a moment.
Sure.
Okay, this is for municipal waste management of how we calculated GHG emissions. Upper part is non-energy derived GHG version. Okay. If you would see the box with GHG here. Okay.
Sure.
This is the future GHG emissions, the red box. And this is the future GHG emissions from energy derived CO2 emissions. And this is from non-energy GHG emission, and this the bottom part is energy CO2 emissions from energy. The blue boxes shows parameters that we changed according to scenarios. So that these shows the differences according to we changed these parameters according to the strength or intensity of measures. I mentioned the priority measures, and we calculated how do I say GHG emissions from emission of waste ton per day per capita. This is future population, and we calculated future emission of waste for waste management. This is from future population and amount of amount of waste per day per capita. And this is GHG emission factors for municipal waste. And these are like biomass plastic ratio or ratio of landfill to semi-aerobic landfill. Or this is like composition of waste incineration facilities. So we changed these parameters according to scenarios. And can you see? This is to our effect by kinds of waste. And these are kinds of waste. And these are kinds of treatment, materials recycling, chemical recycling, energy recovering, and this is position, compost. And this is future
Future amount of treatment for each kind of waste and each kind of treatment method.
And for the energy derived CO2 emissions, they calculate from future energy consumption and also future energy emission factor, GHG emission factor by energy sources. And these we are differentiated according for incineration and human waste treatment facilities, existing or new facilities, or by technology or by capacity. So we changed in scenarios, and these are energy factors. I mean, future energy consumption of new facility. Like we change by scenario, like how much is it, the efficiency or process or
electricity generation efficiency.
Okay, and how much of the electrification, and also for CCUS. Sorry, my explanation isn't good, but we use these parameters and for calculating future GHG emissions.
Okay, thank you very much. And related to your greenhouse gas reductions, there is some also questions about you're like a net zero scenario. It's a CCUS is one of the also key factor to achieve a net zero society. So one of the audience asked about, would you explain a little bit about current or developing CCUS technology in waste sector? So can you answer that questions?
Well, we have some demonstration plant or pilot study plant already in Japan. I think the most famous one is the installation plant in Saga City in Kyushu Island, the southern island in Japan. They capture carbon dioxide from the blanched flue gas, not all of the flue gas, but part of flue gas. And they utilize carbon dioxide to their agricultural purpose for algae or so some kind of vegetable, green vegetable, to foster the growth of the vegetables.
Okay, in Korea also we do have about 17 million ton of CO2 emissions from waste sector, and so it's about 40% of Japanese emissions amount, and but we do not have any like a CCUS methods to reduce greenhouse gas emission from incineration, but we might look at. But nowadays, CCUS is also one of the very promising technology in Korea as well, and we kind of pushing toward that directions to CO2 capturing and CO2 storage and CO2 utilizations methods that we are working on many industry, and also we are making a law for CCUS oriented, like industry development, industry like supporting measures, things like that. So we are doing that direction as well, but we do not have right now a net zero analysis for waste sector. We only look at some bio-based bioplastic and more energy recovery, and some bioenergy project, but we do not have very specific CCUS reduction methods, unlike Japan. So, okay, and I think it's any other questions from the audience? I do not see here, and we have about 3 minutes.
I have one question to Yamamoto.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So in slide 10, page 10, you showed the graph. So I think I don't know that this is what I understanding from the figure. The plastic waste amount is decreasing. Is it correct? Yeah, here. Page 10, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
here.
this is slide 10, right?
The volume of waste plastic seems like decreasing. Is it correct? I don't know. In the future, I think we are using more plastic, and also we will have more waste plastic, but I don't know. How did you get this graph?
And 8 million ton per year.
maybe cute.
Actually,
Action there.
can you look,
Yeah.
Sure.
can you see the functions for waste plastics?
25% reduction.
Reduction.
Yes.
Yeah, we also have kind of similar predictions, similar policy, like 25% reductions by 2030, and then 2050 we replace all the fossil fuel based plastic with bioplastic in Korea. So
Right.
okay.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, in Starbucks also they changed the plastic cap to paper cap, so
Right.
maybe it can be reduced. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and I think it's time to close, and we are very happy to have all three excellent presenters. One presenter, unfortunately, he had to go on the video presentation, but from France, Professor Kim, thank you for your participations and contribution, especially in the very early morning, 6 o'clock or 7
It's my pleasure.
o'clock
Yeah.
in the morning, and also the from Pacific Consultant in Japan, you present quite a good overview of your net zero scenario and analysis and directions in waste sector. Thank you very much, and we have a good discussion as well. And now we close. Thank you very much, and stay safe. And hopefully, we wonderfully close the Three Rings conference within a few hours. Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back to the participants of 3 links. Good afternoon again. My name is Tomonori Shigaki from National Institute for Environment Studies and being MC of this session. From now on, I'm really greatly honored to invite the plenary lecturer, Mr. Frank van Woerden from the World Bank. But before moving to his lecture, I also would like to invite Ms. Rieko Kubota to facilitate his lecture. So I'd like to hand over the microphone to Ms. Rieko. Are you ready?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Ishigaki, for that kind introduction, and great to be part of this closing session today. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. My name is Rieko Kubota. I'm a senior environmental engineer of the World Bank. I would just like to moderate this keynote lecture delivered by my colleague, Frank van Woerden, and to introduce him to the participants of this session today. So Frank is a lead environmental engineer of the World Bank. He's managing a diverse portfolio on solid waste management and pollution management projects in the Middle East and the North African region, and also in Asia. He's currently engaging in the China plastic waste reduction project and also Indonesian national solid waste management projects. But even before that, he has been engaged in multiple projects, I would say, in the area of the solid waste management, hazardous waste management, so on and forth, quite many related to the waste management projects. Frank holds a master's degree in civil and sanitary engineering from Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. So today he's going to give us the presentation titled Solid Waste Management in Low and Middle Income Countries, Challenges, Trends, and Sector Development Approaches. I think he's going to introduce us what the World Bank is focusing and what World Bank is also supporting the clients in terms of the solid waste management. So during his lecture, I'm sure that you have a lot of questions to ask to Frank. So please feel free to type in your questions and comments in your Q&A or chat box. We'll pick it up at the end of his lecture as part of the Q&A session. So Frank, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that the topic of today is what we do in the World Bank. We focus on low and middle income countries for the work that we do. But we're also very fortunate that we can work with countries like Japan and Korea to support these programs. We have quite extensive knowledge exchange programs with Japan and Korea, also in the domain of solid waste management. And we're very grateful for that. And I think that, let's say, I would like to, I start now sharing my screen. And then, let's see how this works. Okay. I think that you can see now the screen that I'm sharing, because let's say what I would like to do is in my presentation start with an overview of, let's say, what are challenges, issues generally in low and middle income countries. But to do that, I would like to paint a picture of from a study, from a massive data collection work we undertook. It's called Water Waste 2.0. I will give you the details on how to get to all this information, and which was essentially sponsored by the government of Japan, but it covered what we could do. It enabled us to really, for all the countries in the world, and also a very large number of cities, collect data and present an overview of all kinds of waste data, trends, challenges, and everything. And let's say before I move to talking about what the World Bank is doing and what our particular experience in the project that we do, I think it's good to take this information to paint, to give you a bit of a sense of the things we see, what's going on in the world of solid waste management. So let me start with some key messages that we see in the waste sector globally. First of all, we clearly see that waste is increasing. It's even almost accelerating the amount of waste that is being produced. And we expect that the total in 2050 will be 70% higher than it is today. And particularly in sub-Saharan regions in Africa and South Asia, these regions are growing faster when it comes to volumes of solid waste management. I will get to all these points a little bit further in the presentation. What we also see is that because these waste volumes are increasing with urbanization, with the growth in prosperity, the GDP, but also because of the types of waste, the impacts on public health are getting even worse. And we see that the trends of investments, and despite the fact that countries are getting richer and can spend more money on solid waste, and they do, it's not keeping up with the production of waste and with the volumes of particularly poorly managed waste, and therefore the impact. So unfortunately, with all the efforts that are being made, even the efforts that we are making, we see unfortunately that in terms of impacts, the situation is rather worsening than getting better. So that is a strong concern. The 1/4 and third finding is that 1/4 of plastic waste is coming from East Asia and the Pacific. And it's even a few limited countries that particularly generate most waste that end up as what we call marine plastics, marine plastic waste, which is really more and more recognized as a global concern. We also see that there is a lot of scope for involving the private sector, and we have solid waste management operations are still predominantly around the world public sector operation, but we see that more and more, and also quite successfully, private sector is engaged. That doesn't mean that it's a strong responsibility of the public sector engagement, but in terms to make systems more efficient, the public sector involvement can grow. Now, this is a bit the tonnages. So what we said, 70% increase. We're talking about massive volumes, expected to go to 3.4 billion tons of waste in 2050. The next slide shows you that we did all this data that was collected really also allows for some analytics. Here you see that there is quite a clear correlation between urbanization rates and the amounts of waste being produced per person per day. It also enables to see, let's say, what are the trends, where are things happening. We basically are dividing the world in 7 sub-regions: Middle East and North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, the Latin America and the Caribbean, North America, South Asia, Europe and Central Asia, and East Asia and the Pacific. And all this data clearly allows to see where are the trends, where are things happening in time. You see here the 3 time points in 2016, 2030, and 2050 projections. And we also, that's why we're seeing that in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, the waste volumes will grow most heavily. What also all this data allows is to see what are the correlations between GDP and volumes of waste. I think we all know that these things are strongly correlated, but with all this data that we have, it clearly shows that this correlation exists, but it also enables to find sort of fitting curve fitting formula. And because very often in many places where we work, waste data is so poor, it means that we generally use this with some other indicators as well to predict based on population, GDP, and some other indicators that we can pretty accurately predict how much waste is being produced, even in situations where data is not so well developed and sometimes not available at all. The high-income countries generate 34% of the world's waste with only 16% of the population. That's a sort of a reflection of what I just said. The GDP has a big impact on waste generation. For all these projections that we do, these are important data. We now see that the global average of municipal solid waste generation stands at around 0.74 kilograms per person per day. Also, the data that we have is closely looking at composition of waste. As we saw that composition of waste very much varies by the income of the countries or the areas where we work. So generally speaking, the higher the income level in a country, the lower the fractions of organic waste and moisture is. And in poor countries, we see very high levels of organics and very wet waste with low calorific values. Although I must say that there are exemptions. There are countries that move in the development curve and still where we find, for all kinds of cultural, other reasons, still find a very high fraction of organic waste, organics in the waste. So you have to be a bit careful by linking the waste composition to the GDP level. It's also particularly on organic and food waste. But we found that, let's say, across the board, averaging between countries with very high organic levels and low ones, there is a tremendous lot of organic waste. There's about 30% in the waste globally is indeed losses of food waste particularly. Now, the plastics waste is getting more and more attention, as you also saw. It's also an important topic of your conference. Plastic was a bit not considered as a particularly high impact material, but that view has dramatically changed. It's now becoming more and more a big concern, and many countries, also low and middle income countries, are really getting very serious about policies to fight plastic waste pollution, to recycle the waste, and also making attempts to reduce the waste, because the volumes are staggering and it's only accumulating in the environment. It's also what you see in the countrysides, but as you also saw in this picture, in the marine environment. In 3 regions, North America, Europe, and East Asia, account for 60% of the plastic waste generation. Now, moving to collection, poor waste collection is particularly a low-income country problem. In low-income countries, they generally protect something around 40% of the waste. What you see in middle-income countries, and certainly in high-income countries, that one of the first things that start really getting organized is waste collections. Then these percentages increase dramatically. Then still there can be many challenges with the further waste treatment and disposal. But what we see is that, particularly in the low-income countries, very often the majority of the waste remains uncollected. Sometimes in the urban areas it's quite okay, but as soon as you move out to the urban areas, more get to the suburban and rural areas, then very often immediately the waste collection drops to near zero. And this is also where what we see in many countries, this is exactly where the main leakages, as we call them, of plastic waste occurs. And they remain in the environment, they wash out, and with floodings, and other mechanisms, or get dumped in the rivers directly. So this uncollected, unmanaged waste is getting more and more a serious concern. People were not that concerned about waste collection in rural areas, but because of all these mechanisms and new insights, it's getting more and more on the agenda, also in lower middle income countries, to look at waste collection in the rural areas. Now, when you look at, let's say, okay, what happens to the collected waste, that is also a picture that where things range quite dramatically between low income countries, middle income countries, and high income countries. Basically, what you see here, that let's say globally, 33% of the waste is what we call open dumping. But in low income countries, it's 90%. I think in low income countries, you hardly see any adequate sound level of waste disposal at all. And as you all can see from the pie chart, we distinguish between open dumping and unspecified landfill and controlled landfill, but these are all still not at the sanitary landfill level. A sanitary landfilling is only 7.7% of the total mix. Of course, there's also incineration, composting, and recycling. But across the world, also for disposal, really sanitary landfill standards, which means proper lining for leachate collection, gas collection, proper management, daily or at least frequent coverage, etc., is almost like the exception to the rule, if applied at all. We also see that in general, solid waste management, I think you also talked a bit about it in other sessions, is an important sector when it comes to contributions to greenhouse gases. It's roughly speaking, across the board, something like 5% of the global emissions in CO2 equivalents of greenhouse gas emissions. And again, this figure is expected to substantially increase. It's not expected to dramatically decrease with the growth, comparing to the total growth of waste in the world. So this is also roughly like an increase of 70%. Now, as you can imagine, because it's also a very important mission statement of the World Bank to really support elevation of poverty and help poor people, that poor waste management is mostly affecting the poorest people. Particularly environmental impacts are very much related to the impacts of burning of waste, the toxics that get released by burning, the fact that diseases are spread in the vicinity of waste, of poorly managed waste. And this obviously happens mostly to people that live not too far from where waste is handled, disposed of, burned, etc. And as you can imagine, there is a very strong correlation between, let's say, the poverty levels and how close people live to waste disposal facilities. We also looked closely at, let's say, to what extent have institutions and policies been set up to deal with waste management. And I think many, almost all middle income countries and low income countries have still much room for progress and improvements to be made. We also see that 30% of the countries basically don't have policies at all or institutions that address. So there's tremendous institutional challenges as well. It's not just a technical or a financial problem, but it's also a policy and an institutional problem, which requires strong attention and development if you really want to improve the sector in the places where we work. Now, also what you clearly see, waste has to manage to a large extent at the local level. It starts with collection. And most countries also basically have policies that put it clearly as a local responsibility to do so. And we also see that local governments basically are not equipped. They don't have the funding, they don't have the institutional capacity, etc., to really properly manage with the waste. And many local communities are already struggling to sort of, at a basic level, finance very basic services collections, very often only in the urban areas. But then in terms of investments, there's simply no funding available at all. And so main funding sources for investments have to come from national government programs as subsidies, transfers, and sometimes from the private sector. And there are countries where things are largely left to the private sector to sort out. But then you get the problem that, let's say, the private sector also has to be funded. So you get the mechanism that we call cherry picking. So the private sector start catering for the people who can afford waste services, and the private sector cannot afford to service people with lower income levels. But that's a very special mechanism by itself. Now, we also looked how waste management is organized. We don't see that much difference in the split between public and private sector across income levels. You see all kinds of modalities, but you do see in high income countries that there is much more involvement and basically responsibilities for private sector operators to run systems, to run collections, etc. In lower and middle income countries, it's much less. It's largely a public sector revenue where, let's say, certain basic services are contracted, but there is certainly much more scope to do that. And the main challenge, as we said, is that is basically the financing of operations. In low-income countries, they typically spend $35 per ton, which is already a lot of money for them, but it's not sufficient because, let's say, in high-income countries, even at a fairly basic level, you already spend more than $100 per ton, which means that in low-income countries, and that's also what you see across the board, solid waste management typically absorbs something like 20% of municipal budgets. So it's a big constraint. So that we start paying a lot of attention to these things. Now, so we see that a few takes away are that, let's say, major investments are needed. As you said, we are behind the curve. So particularly in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. But also in all regions, there is and we are really thinking hard about that. We have also had a sort of internal review on really how to, maybe also with parties, with countries, with the private sector, to mobilize more funding to work on the solid waste management, because it's a sector that really needs acceleration in investment programs. But we also see very clearly that this can only be done if there is the operational financing. So because it's secured, because in contrary to, let's say, other municipal services like water supply and etc., or basically transport infrastructure, the main cost of solid waste management are in operations and maintenance. It's about 70% of the total cost, much higher than any cost related to investments. And for a sustainable model, you need to have, let's say, sustainable financing of this operating cost. So you can make all the investments as you like, but you will need to have secured the operational finance. And in our approach, it doesn't matter that much. Well, you want to have what we call a cost recovery based on user tariffs, that people pay for the waste that they generate, whether it is households or commercial sector or other parties. But then the reality is that in the vast majority of countries in the world, waste management is subsidized. And that can be from local budget, it can be transfers from national budget, it can be by cross-subsidizing. But the main thing is, of course, that there is a sustainable source mix of financing for operational management, for running the operations. If that's in place, then a lot of other problems are solved. So, like I said, engaging the private sector, that is something that can help, particularly make things more efficient. So this is a bit the overview of what we see globally in terms of trends, challenges, issues. I would like to spend the time left to talk a bit about, let's say, how we as a World Bank are working and what are a bit our own experiences in this field. What I presented so far are more general observations on trends and challenges of for lower middle income countries to improve performance of service in the waste sector. But let me now say a few words on, let's say, what we as a World Bank are doing. So, well, first of all, solid waste management is a very important investment program, sector, portfolio for the World Bank across the world. We typically work in low and middle income countries. We are a development bank, so we support countries to develop various sectors, and solid waste management is one of them, and it's an important one. We, as a World Bank, are part of the World Bank Group. The World Bank itself, where I also work for, is working for the public sector, and we support central governance mainly. We can support local governments, but that normally goes through central government programs. We are very closely looking at ways to involve the private sector, to enable, to mobilize private sector investments and participation. But our direct support, engagement is always with central governments. Under the World Bank Group, there is the IFC, the International Finance Corporation. They directly work with private sector parties. But from what I'm further going into is talk about what we as the World Bank are doing in the field of solid waste management. We, for the last 10 years, we had a program of $4 billion, which is quite substantial for us. But we also see that it is indeed quite strongly accelerating, particularly in the last 3-4 years. So a big part of this 4 billion is coming from, let's say, what we've been doing in recent years. But like I said, it's still not keeping up with the trend of increasing waste volumes and thus increasing impacts of poorly managed waste. Now we see some trends. I think this talk is also a bit to share with you what we see and what we do ourselves. I think you already saw a bit from also the other points that I mentioned earlier in this presentation, that although we are in a way an investment bank, but we clearly see that you cannot start investing in the sector without addressing sector challenges. And very often the sector challenges are not finding a pot of money to pay for investments, but it's really about certain reforms in the sector that are needed. And many countries come from a situation, particularly low-income countries, where solid waste management used to be a household or a community-level responsibility. And suddenly the population grows, the city grows, and there is less room to manage waste. The volumes increase because the increase in prosperity, and it becomes a big municipal level problem. But let's say the funding, the system, the infrastructure is absolutely not developed at all, and is still based on, let's say, the old days where, let's say, people sort of took care of solid waste management by themselves. So this you cannot solve this problem without sector reforms, without organizing the institutions, securing the budgets that you require to run these systems. Land issues start becoming a big more role. I will get a bit into that, but for us, let's say now, when we get into a program, a project to support the solid waste sector, the first questions we want to ask, okay, what are the conditions? What are the sector challenges? What does it take to sustainably run the investments and make sure that they are embedded institutionally, that they're embedded in the overall system of collection and treatment and disposal and recycling and everything? And how do you secure that that this thing works and becomes the basis for further development, for sustainable improvements in the sector? So we hardly have any standalone investments anymore. We always embedded that in those other sort of development of the capacity to absorb these investments. What we also see as a clear trend, of course, is that, let's say, the main focus, let's say 10 years ago, still used to be collection, disposal, the recycling, the circular economy concepts, all kinds of ways to recycle waste, maybe even reduce the waste from being generated, are almost by definition now becoming integrated programs of solid waste management. So we hardly have any programs anymore that do not address at least these things. It doesn't mean that the basic investments of proper collection, proper disposal, are not, that still remains very valid. But I think we hardly see anymore that is not paired with clear thinking and looking at ways to reduce the waste together with the basic services. So these are some of the broader trends. Then so more at the sector level, we see that the challenges are, like I said, that these governance challenges are often much more constraining than access to investment funding. And what we see as very typical challenges in the waste sector is not first of all, but land issues. Land issues are becoming really more and more of a problem. It was never easy to find land for waste services, but we hardly see projects where land issues do not play a role. So this is always something to very closely consider and try to address, and basically try to have secured land for investments to be as a very high level issue in the development of our projects. Now, the lack of operational finance, I already mentioned, the local and central government capacity to support the sector. Then monitoring and enforcement. Very often in places where we work, the monitoring and enforcement capacity is weak. So to have mechanisms to monitor, let's say, also private operator contracts, but also the practices of waste disposal, the coverage of waste collection system. What does the central government do when let's say municipalities are lacking or when operators are lacking? What mechanism have you to monitor, to report, to collect data, but also to act when necessary? And it's also much more recognized that, particularly when you start looking at recycling and source segregation, but also increasing the tariffs for waste. Sometimes people just pay a few dollars per ton in real terms of contributions to waste management, and it has to be elevated. But to ask from the public to pay more for waste services and to ask from the public to participate in recycling schemes, you need to have thought very well and involve the public in developing programs for education and for outreach, for citizen engagement, So that element is key in particularly enhancing the services levels, enhancing the with higher cost and getting to the recycling. Now, the operational finance I already mentioned. We typically see that even at the basic level, you need something like $75 per ton. So that so that's something to design very, very carefully. And very often you end up with a program where you take like 5 years to move to a certain what is called achievable level of tariff setting. That's still probably not 100% of the cost, but then also to have financial engineering to see then how that can be then supported by other sources, maybe revenues from recyclables, the budget, the cross-subsidizing as just mentioned. But this design of operational finance is one of the first things we try to get right when we start considering investments. Now, what we also see with land issues in many places, of course, there is the NIMBY, not in my backyard challenges. People don't like to see new facilities. But there is also simply the sheer matter of availability. And so these land issues, often sometimes even more than an environmental consideration, become the big drivers to look for alternative technologies and to look for recycling for cities that start considering incineration, even if it's much more costly than disposal. It's very often the land issues that are driving these agendas. To try and as much as possible move away from disposal of waste, because that's the most land-taking activity. Well, as I mentioned, marine plastics is a global good, the plastic pollution. We clearly see that there's quite a few countries where we work which did not have a great record in solid waste management, but are really getting on this agenda because, well, the marine pollution, they're clearly put in the top 10 of countries where marine plastics are coming from. This is starting to really steer the agenda, steer the thinking that indeed waste management also good waste management contributes to like these global goods. So very often and more we have in our programs indicators and targets to reduce the plastic load to waterways and subsequently to the ocean. And so these are one of the more like, well, policy drivers, sector developments that are driving the solid waste. Now I would like to get a bit at the end of the presentation. I'm looking at the time. Yes, we got a little bit of time left to look at, let's say, okay, what do we serve in terms of, well, design, systems, solutions? Well, as you will see also in this slide, particularly on landfilling, because that you saw that there's only a limited percentage of disposal sites in the countries where we work can be classified as sanitary landfilling. So there is indeed still quite a big push to move from open dumping, from poorly managed disposal sites to sanitary landfills with the gas capture, leachate capture and everything. We also see that vertical expansion, there is no land. So sometimes even despite years of efforts to try and secure land and everything, but what we see, because that greenfield site development of landfills is going so complicated that you start really considering virtual integration. There can be all kinds of reasons why people don't like it, but we see many places where basically existing landfills have been poorly developed in the live existence. So it can be quite shallow. It's not well compacted. So there is a lot of scope for many places for consolidation and vertical expansion. But vertical expansion had to expand a landfill on top of all this deposited waste has all kinds of technical challenges. But I think the the approaches to that have really substantially improved in the years, and I think it became a very good solution in cases where you always have to dispose in most countries where incineration, etc., are far too costly. You have to still in many places rely on a certain level of capacity for landfilling. Then vertical expansion can be a good solution. Consolidating dump sites, closing smaller ones, increasing the capacity of a few is a very important aspect of the work that we do. We also are involved in regional landfills, moving away from every local government, every municipality, every village having its own little landfill or disposal site, and try to get regional landfills that services multiple administrative boundaries, but it is administratively very complex to make the arrangements, to make people pay the proper gate fees, to get the proper buy-in, and basically very often we see that the model are built on ownership and one big party takes the lead and then engage with others works best. But these are complicated administrative arrangements in many countries. Now, when it comes to the certain other than landfilling, other approaches, well, I already talked about recycling and segregation at source. Like I said, there's almost no project anymore that we do that does not have a strong focus on trying to reduce waste and recycle everything. In terms of developments, we do see clearly for recycling, collection and sorting, the introduction of IT solutions, all kinds of interesting apps, a solution that can distinguish between certain types of plastics and other recycled materials, even pay citizens small amounts of monies in very automated fashions. The IT solutions for something that is logistically very costly, waste recycling, splitting into a large number of waste streams and deal with it separately. There's all kinds of IT solutions that make that much more manageable and also bring it much more closer to at the citizen level to participate in recycling schemes. Now, in terms of alternative technologies for treatment, maybe a few words. I think we can spend a day on talking about it by itself. But we do see that for anaerobic digestion, it used to be a very complicated solution for mixed municipal waste. But we see nowadays that there's some applications for anaerobic digestion in mass treatment of municipal waste are becoming pretty mainstream, and particularly for high organic fractions of waste, like kitchen waste. Like in Asia, many countries have oily, high calorific value, high organics level waste. And then anaerobic digestion has become, I think it really grew out of the child disease period and become pretty much a mainstream solution. Now, composting remains the most common approach in the mechanical biological treatment for organics. That's also what we clearly see. For RDF, the refugee-priced fuel, we see also now with the increasing fuel prices, the energy prices, that it is on the increase in some countries. So it's a bit of a mixed picture, because we also see in certain high recycling economies, like in Western Europe, that it's becoming less prominent for certain countries or certain regions, this RDF production. Now, waste to energy, there's always a big debate in many countries to move from basic services, collection, disposal, try to introduce waste to energy incinerator solutions. First of all, in high-income countries, we do see a phasing out. Incinerator is at the lower level of the waste hierarchy compared to recycling and reduction. where in countries where indeed the recycling rates are being pushed up to 40, 50, 60, 65% even, you see a reduce in the volumes that go for incineration. On the other hand, we clearly see that many countries, particularly with large metropolitan cities, very little space, are strongly looking at waste incineration. We're not opposing it, of course. We also see that, let's say for the World Bank, we do work with countries to integrate waste to energy solutions. But in terms of financing, once you can define the scope for the waste to energy solution, and once that is basically the proper operational funding to feed the incinerator, the waste incinerator, and once all the arrangements have been made for the feed-in tariff for electricity generation, then basically the investment funding is not a challenge so much anymore. Then there is many parties that will be happy to step in. So that's why normally we don't finance waste incinerator, not because we cannot, but it's more like we don't see very much the need to do so. We rather than concentrate on, creating the enabling environment and the conditions to make these things work. But we also see that the development is very complicated. Trajectories of 10 years for development are not unusual at all. It's administratively contacting very complex, particularly for many countries who are not experiencing these things. Of arrangements for feed-in tariffs. Feed-in tariff for electricity generation can be very often a bigger source of revenues than the gate fees for the waste. So, but that type of arrangements can require complete sector reforms in the power sector. So it can be quite challenging. And then of course, waste incineration is a very common approach, in your countries, Japan, Korea, in Europe, US. But in many countries where we work, the waste contents, the calorific value, the moisture contents can be quite challenging. It makes it the production level more complicated. We also see a massive, not massive, but more and more interest in small-scale incineration. We have a bit of a mixed view on that because technically and environmentally it's possible, but it has some major challenges. And there's always, when I started in the sector quite a long decades ago, there was already talk about promising new advanced technologies like gasification pyrolysis. It has not, it has developed, but we have certainly not seen like a mass application in solid waste management for those things. So we see some very focused on certain waste fractions applications, but that's a bit about it. Okay, let me conclude by thanking you very much. The data is in the waste energy, which is the publication itself, this link, but there's also the database there that you can make all kinds of selections if you want to go into these things deeper. And happy to conclude my presentation. Like I said, thank you very much, and open it up for, I see Rieko is already coming in for any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Frank, for a really wonderful lecture. I think it was very insightful with all the results and findings from Water Waste 2.0 report, and also from your project experience globally, actually, not only in certain regions. So I'd like to just remind all the participants in this session that please put in the question in the chat box. We will pick it up as many as possible. And I'm glad to see there are some questions coming in already. So I'd like to already start picking one of them up. So question from Samuel. So is there any investment of World Bank through NGO for waste management in Sub-Saharan Africa? Frank, maybe you can discuss about if there's any World Bank projects that supports NGOs, not only in the context of maybe Sub-Saharan Africa, but maybe in the other region as well.
Yes, sure. I think that, let's say, like I said, the World Bank finances basically programs that are managed by governments. So our first flow of support and funding, if you come, we talk about implementation now, is always at that level. But yes, it's fairly common in the design of the programs, particularly at the local level, at the municipal level, to improve collection, to start introducing waste recycling, to work with NGOs. That's a very common model. But like I mentioned, particularly you want to engage the population, you want to work with the population. Sometimes it's way much better to work with NGOs or community organizations to do like that than to rely on administration. So at that level, a big yes. And I think we also tend to, but that's more like a feedback mechanism that we nowadays always include in our project design what we call a citizen engagement program. Or component, I should say, an element. So that means that, let's say, for the implementation of the projects, we would like to get feedback on, okay, how is it perceived? What do people think? What do people think is right or wrong? How things can be improved? So, and there, I must say that this is a very much working with NGOs, so not so much with individual citizens, but let's say more NGOs that are quite close to communities and citizens. So I hope this answers your questions, but that's particularly the level of engagement that's with NGOs in this sector.
Thanks, Frank. From my experience as well, I think NGO is more of development partners to the World Bank rather than the clients of the project. So we do implement the projects, I think, in many cases with the NGOs, especially as for the outreach and citizens engagement activities, as Frank said. So there's another question from Acha. Africa has many policies related to solid waste management, but the implementation is very weak in that management of financial resources. And he also says that the many municipal workers do not have any qualification in the environmental fields. Does World Bank do anything to reverse this situation? So Frank, maybe you can discuss a bit about the lack of implementation and enforcement issue.
Yeah, I think you're putting exactly the finger at the right spot where the real challenges are, and I think it sort of links. I think your question very much to let's say the shift in working in the sector, as I just mentioned. We do not do just investments, just allocate some money, build a treatment center, build a landfill, build anything. Okay, what does it take to properly develop the sector, to increase the collection rates, to properly deal with the waste, to have sustainable funding and everything, and also what you mentioned, the capacity of the municipal organization or the workers to do these things. So I think this is an extremely strong focus of ourselves. Of course, I mean, we are the World Bank. We come in when clients, when the government or local governments ask us to support. And then that's the entry point where we say, okay, that's fine. And very often we get the question, can you finance this or can you finance that? And then that's the point where we say, well, yes, we think we can, but then we need to start addressing these challenges as well. You have bigger problems than maybe lacking some money to do something. And so, yes, that's where we really try at least to deal with this issue, also the one you mentioned. But it's not like we cannot go out and from ourselves say things. I mean, we there to support. If people, we can help the horse drink, but we cannot make the horse drink. So that's the water. So that's a bit how we work. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks so much, Frank. Is there anyone else who would like to ask Frank a question about his lecture or anything else about the World Bank projects in the solid waste management? You can just simply come in by unmuting yourself or raising hands. Okay, while waiting for another question, let me just ask one more question. So in this Three Rings conference, it has a lot of participants coming from the academic backgrounds, with the researcher, professors at the university, and so on and forth. So we talked about the engagement with the NGO, but how does the World Bank also engage the academic researchers in the project implementation, preparation, and so on? And how do you see that kind of potential opportunity to work and collaborate between the international financial institutions like the World Bank and that academic community?
Yes, well, thank you very much. It's a nice question. I think where we mainly work with academia is more, to be honest, on where we really also for ourselves needs more research, simply because it's uncharted territory. Once a project has been completely designed and implemented and framed in a financial agreement and everything, then it's sort of it runs its course. There still can be elements. There can be funding allocated for some research because we still do not know. But I want to give you maybe two examples. For instance, particularly in the waste plastics problems, and particularly how to, let's say, have from plastic production to getting into the waste, plastics getting into the waste stage. And then part of that waste, because of poor management, is leaking into the environment and then getting into the waterways. And then that can be direct. In Indonesia, for instance, still about 8% of waste is directly dumped into the water. For people, it's their waste service outlet. You just dump directly in the water. But most of the waste, plastic waste, is runoff from land, from simply rainfall runoff or flooding, some other mechanisms perhaps. But let's say it's very difficult to measure, to monitor, even to model exactly what quantities are we really talking about. All these international studies, they're very rough estimates in a way. So we're doing a lot of research with the academia to say, okay, how do these mechanisms work? Where can you intervene to be most efficient? But also, so that modeling, what is also the impact of hydrology? What are the mechanisms from this plastic element to at some point end up in the river and in the ocean? That's still a lot of work of research, and we're quite involved in that. And then the other thing is that, but that's a bit in the same topic, there's a lot of progress, and also we work with universities on that to monitor, let's say, what type of places are coming down waterways in rivers, and we use with drones and universities working on approaches to much more refine, let's say, what type of plastics are coming down the river. Are these bags? Are these straws? Are these empty bottles? Is this other stuff? What type of plastics? PP, PE, PVC, perhaps, PET, whatnot. And the software and also the multi-spectra cameras and everything to start recognizing which type of plastics, etc., is getting much and more better. But there's a lot of research going on, and it's a very important type of research to say, okay, what are the main products? What are the main, because that can also help in, let's say, programs to reduce the waste, maybe with the manufacturers, the Coca-Colas and Pepsi-Colas in the world, stuff like that. So that it's at that type of level that we work a lot with universities, and we're always very interested in to hear from universities that have programs or have ideas to work in this sector. So please, if you have ideas, come forward, and thank you very much. I see it's about time, eh?
Yeah. Thanks, Frank. Yeah, it's about the time. And yeah, so I just put that link to the World Bank homepage where you can download the Waterways 2.0 report. So if anyone is interested in reading the full report of Waterways 2.0, please just click the link so that you can download the report and have a full access to that knowledge that's been produced under this project. The report. So Frank, thank you so much for sharing with us your experience and insightful knowledge. So I hope that we can continue in this discussion. Hopefully we have the opportunity to work with the participants who are on this workshop today. So thank you very much to you, and back to Dr. Ishigaki. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Rieko. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank and Rieko as well. And yeah, for your very wonderful presentation and communication as well. Thank you very much. And I also refer many times the Waterways 2.0. So I really happy to listen your talk today. And also I really appreciate to show you, not you, but overview and perspective of the World Bank on this field. Thank you very much. And I really hope to keeping in touch with you from now on in the future. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Well, for the participant oath readings, now I'm going to move on to the closing sessions. And there are, I don't want to push it so much something like a ceremonial event, but just I'd like to share our information with you. So first of all, I'd like to invite Dr. Shinichi Sakai from Advanced Science, Technology and Management Research Institute of Kyoto to introduce the Journal of Material Cycles and Waste Management and calling the papers to the special issue. So Dr. Sakai, please. Sakai Sensei is there. Maybe I see he's in the panelist and yeah, successfully uploaded.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. A little bit, okay. Okay, first of all, I'm Shinichi Sakai of I engaged in this links and the conference as a member of a steering committee. And I'm working in the Advanced Science, Technology, Management Research Institute of Kyoto. Okay, in this about 5 days, and personally, you enjoyed of new findings of research and also some comprehensive lecture and discussion of each other. Okay, the outline of this 8 readings of 2022 will be summarized by our colleague. Therefore, as a moment in the first of all, I would like to have a special appreciation for the co-organizers, Korean Society of Waste Management, and also some solid waste association of Thailand, and also some special of supporting agencies. We would like to appreciation for your special supporting and some special advices. And also some we have so many of sponsorships, especially private companies with this supporting. We can manage over this conference and this time. Okay, Many thanks this time. Okay, next I'd like to introduce some limitation to a special issue of academic journal, of a journal of material cycles and waste management. This journal has been started approximately more than 20 years ago. After that, this journal has been growing up, and at the moment is this impact factor of this journal is around 2.8 in the. As you can see over this graph, and this is a trend of impact factor. And another this record is some trends of total submission papers, especially after 2010. Of submission paper has been increased like this in the, compared with 10 years ago, almost 10 times of total submission. In these circumstances, high level of impact factor keeping is too difficult to manage, but fortunately, the impact factor is also some increasing. Therefore, gradually, some high cited, high number of citation has been kept. And also we have a good quality of academic paper we have. Okay, this journal is has been published in the Springer Nature, and therefore some supporting from the published companies is also some we have with several other corporations. After just 2 years ago, at the moment is bi-monthly publication has been kept. And also the time to first decision is around over 2 months. And this record is also gradually in the some updating. Compared with last year, 10 days faster to the for the first decision like this. Okay, this today we'd like to announce over 2 types of special issue for the 8th 3 links. One is some papers from general submissions, general sessions. We welcome original papers from those who submit their abstract and paid registration fee for the presentation of S3 links, and we welcome. And if possible, the submitted manuscript will be significantly enhanced and updated from the original short abstract in this of 3 links that will be welcomed. And also, we especially welcome the submission by the conference participants and who are recommended to submit their manuscript for the special issue by their session chairs. Also, each session chairs recommended over 1 or 2 papers in the session will be recommended to each dedicated of authors. Therefore, we will welcome such a recommendation. Okay, another type of some special issue and will be some article from special sessions and creative sessions. In this 3 links of 8th conferences, we have 5 special sessions and also some 5 creative sessions. Therefore, we welcome paper submission by the presenters and the relevant members who are this in the special issue from the special and creative session. we expect of a session organizer or some session chairs to select articles in line with their object and of each session topics. And the session organizer and chairs can invite authors regardless of their participation, if only that they make a big contribution to the research funding related to each session topics. Therefore, some sessions are suited to collect over many types of articles, many number of articles. On the other hand, some sessions are appropriate to choose one or two papers describing the general overview and/or some comprehensive insights of the session topics. Therefore, several types of various types of special issue can be. Okay, some important points in that I would like to introduce. Okay, the submit paper will be follow the standard rule and the review process for peer-reviewed paper. And therefore, each papers will be reviewed by at least two international experts in each of some special field. And the deadline for the paper submission will be the end of May this year. Therefore, some more than 2 months and remain. Okay. The accepted paper will be published at the end of March or May of next year as a volume number 25. And basically, there will be no page charge for authors in this special issue. But recently, some authors who choose to the public open access required to pay article proceedings charge, we call in the APC. This APC is a little bit expensive like this, but open access paper will be available. All readers all over the world under the free of charge. And this open access system is gradually and some internationally accepted, especially for the research funding officially. So some each authors will try to with their own research budget. Okay, a little bit of detailed explanation of producer for the submission. Okay, and in the website, website of submission is this URL address. In this website, you can choose over enter comments of key. And would you please over your specification to submit a special issue or the H3 links, sorry, 2022, please, and this is a mistake in that. In the field of like this one. As already mentioned, we have 3 types of some category, or general session and special session and creative session. Therefore, would you please write down in this column of manuscript type of H3 links of 2022, please, in the field of general session or some special session, the creative session like this. Okay, as you can see over this the URL address, and we will open the call for special issue will be opened just after the this ceremony and just after H3 links, and we will open these URL address. This time is some special editor for this special issue, and will be the Dr. Asari and Dr. Ishigaki from the steering committee, and also some this time the Professor Sodeno and Dr. Ahota have a big contribution for the special the creative session. And also President Professor Yoshioka will have some cooperative over some editing team for the, this type of special issue. Okay, several mistakes and we have. Okay, and finally, one more point of some I would like to introduce. In this S3 links, and we have a special session on the material cycles in construction works. This topics is just running as a special issue from the last year, entitled on the same title, and explore contribution of construction industry to solution perspective for technical, political, and environmental issues over material cycles and waste management. Therefore, this time of this special session collaborate with this special issue of academic journal. This session has been chaired by Professor Inui of Osaka University, and also plenary lectures by Professor Katsumi of Kyoto University, and 4 authors of a special issue, which has been decided to accept the paper, have contributed on this session. And therefore, this topic and is not included in this 22nd special issue. And, but this type of some cooperation is a new challenge for us is a special issue first, and after that a special session. This is a special case in this conference. Until now, after the special session or some general session, we will open the call for paper. And after that, over some editing work over the special issue. But in the future, if urgent or the emergency topic and will be happen, and we would like to have a special issue first, is one kind of a challenge for the purpose of timely of academic and our contribution. Therefore, this type of some cooperation is also I would like to think about in near future. Okay, that's all from my side. Okay, thank you for your kind attention, and I would like to have a good submission to the journal, and also some for the purpose of a future of foods of social real solution in this field. Okay, would you please try and try? Okay, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Sakai, to give the very precious information about the journal and the call for special issues. So now most of the participants had realized that you have a right and a chance to submit your papers to this special issue on A3 links. So I hope this information will motivate all of you to submit or even to improve your research and article as well. So thank you, Professor, again. So next, I like to move on to the session on the reflective talks on 3 links 2022. This is not a kind of official statement, but I had invited some members of the organizing committee and even the participants on these 3 links, and to give some impression or talks about the to join this activity in this week. So I have invited several members or persons already. So first of all, may I introduce or may I invite Dr. Yasuhiko Hotta, who works very hard for preparing and operating the special session or creative session as well. So Dr. Hotta, if you're there, please start your speech or commenting. Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Shigaki-san, for introduction. So I like on behalf of the say planning members of the special session, I'd like to present my reflection. I'm not so sure it's working or not, so I'm going to utilize. Yeah. So basically, I like what I'd like to inform is how we plan the special session, and then some of the reflection from the those I directly planned. And the idea of the special session to be more well organized started in the Three Links Autumn session. So we organized in the October last year international symposium titled Paradigm Shift Towards Sustainability, an interdisciplinary discussion on global critical issue on waste management. And there we discussed invited several experts and partners to discuss what would be the globally critical issue for the coming decades in the field of waste management and circular economy. And we discuss about plastics and related issue, digital transformation, impact from the COVID-19, decarbonization, disaster waste management. And actually also through this meeting, we could, how to say, facilitate a good collaboration between Japan society and Korean society. And building on that experience, that we try to develop the special session in the following three principles or ideas. First is to capture and feature emerging issues and linking those to the SDGs. And the other point was not only Japanese society, but we like to encourage or strengthen our partnership with our partner organizations through special session. So such as SWAT or China Association or Korean society. And as a result, the partners are very, how to say, willing to, contribute to the special session. And we'd like to thank all the partner organization or co-organizers to contribute their idea to develop the special session very active one. And also, as Professor Sakai mentioned, we try to intend to collaborate with a special issue for Journal of Material Cycles and Waste Management. So based on that concept, we try to develop the special sessions. Actually, looking at the topic covered in the plenary and special session and creative session contributed by UNEP and the other organization, I think the original kind of the idea that we discussed at Three Links in autumn last year was quite well reflected in either in the plenary or special session or creative session. But at the same time, we also identified several other emerging kind of topics, such as circular economy in the context of the different countries, like organized by SWAT, or the 2 hours or decentralized technology for waste management. This is also very interesting for in terms of the context for China, and material cycles in construction works. or like sustainable procurement, mercury waste management, etc. And I think the other intended idea was to strengthen the collaboration with partners and co-organizers. And I think it was very successful. In addition to those society in the Thailand or China, Korea and Japan, but also we could co-organize some of the plenary or closing events with OECD or World Bank, UNEP, area, and IGES. So I think it was quite the intended, how to say, like aim, intention of the special session was well, I'd say like achieved, I think. So, for example, like a plenary 2, regional conference on global plastic outlook. Originally, we just tried to invite OECD person as a keynote speaker, but in the end, it became like a co-organized event between IGES, OECD area, and 3 links organizing committee, because OECD wanted to launch global plastic outlook at Asia Pacific, and they found 3 links would be a good venue to launch this to the expert in the Asia Pacific region and to the stakeholders engaged in circular economy and waste management. And also we could have a good participation from the policy relevant stakeholders such as OECD, ASEAN Secretariat, and so on. The another one that I organized was a special session 2 on the 2 hours. And this one also was good because like we tried to focus on the non-technical aspect of circular economy. It means like a socio-economic aspect, consumers' perspective, new business and service models. And we could get the case studies from Japan, UK, Vietnam, Thailand, and India. So, and then in the end, we, the experts participating to this session kind of agreed that there is an increasing needs for policy studies to provide incentives and regulate consumer behavior and business models for circular economy. And also another important point was we could have participation from the RAP. RAP is a UK-based public-private partnership organization to promote waste prevention. But that kind of third-party organization role is very much important to link policy and to the consumer level changes or business model changes. Yeah, thank you. Those are my reflection from the special session and from the planning stage. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hotta, to give very detailed information on the special session and the creative sessions. And participants, some of you may firstly realize we have so many events. And if you're interested in, we may also give you a chance to show you some recorded sessions after this, after the conference. So please wait for a moment for you may receive the further information. Anyway, Dr. Hotta, thank you very much. And then I'd like to invite Dr. Junya Yano to give the also reflective talks on the general sessions. Dr. Yano, if you're ready, please start your presentation or speech.
Thank you, Dr. Shigaki. Can you see my screen?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, thank you. I'm Jun Yano from Kyoto University. I'd like to briefly introduce a short summary of the general session as the 3 links. As you can see that this slide, totally 55 presenters from 17 countries has been done from the Argentina, Australia, Bangladesh, Brazil, Cameroon, Canada, China, Indonesia, and Japan. And in the case of Japan, there are some PhD students or master course students from the foreign countries are also joined, and Malaysia, and from Nepal, Palestine, South Korea, Spain, Taiwan, Thailand, and Vietnam. So thank you very much for your excellent presentations. I believe that through this conference, we could have the fruitful discussions through general session. And when we see the topic of the session, there are some of the sessions focus on the specific waste fractions, such as plastics or food loss or e-waste or hazardous waste and so on. And some session is a focus on the technical aspects, such as management technologies or landfills or disposal, or some of the system analysis. And some of one is also related to the political aspects. And the total is 338 participants are joined this general session. And to manage these sessions, total is 15 session chairs supported our conference. So I'd like to show thankfulness for their kindness, support, and active discussions from the participants and presenters and chairs and so on. This is a short summary of our general session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yano, and also thank you very much for all presenters in general sessions to give your latest research information in this conference. So after that, I'd like to invite some international opinion from the international researchers. So first of all, I'd like to invite Professor Tonet from University of the Philippines, Tillman. And I know I have received the message video from her, so I'd like to show her video from now on. Takes the time a little bit. Oh, yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to congratulate the organizers of 3 Rinks for successfully holding this year's conference. It was well organized with a good mix of technical presentations, plenary lectures, special and creative sessions. Thank you to all the presenters for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. You have given us fresh ideas and new perspectives and inspired us to continue to work harder to attain our sustainability goals. Thank you so much to the organizers for providing us with this platform where researchers and practitioners in the field of waste management are able to showcase their outputs, at the same time network with each other. It is very important that we get to know our colleagues working in other parts of the world, especially among our neighbors in the region. The challenges of waste management are huge and involves all aspects, ranging from the technical, socioeconomic, and policy aspects. Thus, we need to collaborate with other stakeholders in the field to come up with holistic and sustainable solutions. It is also important that we collaborate on a regional scale. We can learn a lot from best practices of our neighboring countries and adapt them to our local conditions. The issue of marine litter knows no geopolitical boundaries, and this needs to be tackled on a regional level. We need to harmonize standards and analytical methods to quantify plastic pollution. We can also have harmonized monitoring program within the seas of Asia and the Pacific. Disaster waste management is another major challenge that is facing us as a region, which we need to address urgently. We will benefit a lot from learning about how each of us tackle this problem as we move forward in formulating guidelines to manage disaster wastes. We are a region frequently suffering disasters, and thus we need to be able to manage well the wastes that are generated during these events. We cannot stop an earthquake or a typhoon from occurring, but we definitely can control how we manage its impacts, such as wastes. These are some of the issues that we can work on as a region. Conferences such as this are excellent opportunities for network building. We may be facing huge environmental problems, but with cooperation and collaboration with each other, we are able to strengthen our capability to better handle such environmental issues. Again, thank you so much to our organizers, especially our hardworking secretariat, for giving us a well-organized and designed program of activities. Hopefully, we can meet next year in person. Have a pleasant afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, to give very warm but a very critical message for our conference. I really appreciate you to collaborate with us this time, and also hopefully to be involved in our activity from now on in the future. Thank you, Professor. And I also invite some opinion from the students. So first of all, I'd like to invite Ms. Sayaka Ono, who is studying learning and working in Asian Institute of Technology. So I also received the video message from her. So I'd like to start her message from now on.
This is Sayaka Ono, who is a PhD researcher at the Asian Institute of Technology in Thailand. My research is focused on the assessment of plastic waste management in Japan, Thailand, India, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan. This is my first time joining in 3Links. This is an amazing platform. Thank you very much for organizing this event. I learned a lot about advanced research and heard insightful opinions. I helped in organizing the first creative networking session on 14th March in order to promote the role of digital technology in waste management and circular economy. I introduced mobile apps in order to maximize 3 hours across plastic value chain. I'm so pleased to share small closing comments as a relatively young participant in this event, with focusing on 2 points. The first is about the expectation of digital tools for the circular economy. The creative session, which I joined on the first day of this event, gave us a lot of potential opportunities and ongoing exciting activities. At the same time, some obstacles and challenges were shared, especially from practitioners, including sustainability as a business service. I believe this event has provided us to share our own insights and promote future collaboration, which can help overcome those barriers. The second is about the young generation for the circular economy. Currently, I'm studying in Thailand and surrounded by many young people interested in the concept of a circular economy or waste management, especially from Asian countries. They are willing to promote the circular economy or improve the waste management in general as a different role, such as researchers, entrepreneurs, or sometimes artists. Also, some of my friends have joined in this event. Therefore, I believe this event can provide a platform that gives the knowledge, connect those people, and eventually synergize with those people. Again, thank you very much for all participants, presenters, and organizers. I'm genuinely looking forward to meeting you next year at this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for giving us a very strong message from young generations. And I hope young researcher also start to interrelation or the communication each other and to make our activity in 3 links or in this research field more actively. So thank you very much. And also I like to invite one more student opinion from Mr. Rex Ruiz from University of the Philippines Tillmans. So I'd like to show his message from now on.
Good day. I am Rex Ranto Ruiz, an MS Environmental Engineering student of the University of the Philippines. I would like to extend primarily my gratitude and kudos to the 3 Rinks organization, especially the core organizing team and the secretariat for coming up with a well-organized virtual event. Equally, I would like to extend my congratulations to the presenters for sharing their diverse studies on the field of solid waste management. Truly, the discussions on this seminar contribute and support the greater objectives of UN SDG 12, that is responsible consumption and production, and the other ancillary SDGs like SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, and SDG 13, Climate Action. Through this platform, I have learned significant and supplemental learnings about life cycle analysis and materials flow analysis, which is in line with my master's thesis study on the integrated evaluation of different solid waste management scenario sustainability in flooded small island communities. Moreover, from the presentations, I have elucidated the greater impacts and the need to establish solid waste management policies in developing countries and small island nations to effectively trigger sustainable mechanisms to different areas of SWM like disaster waste. My background is a photo I have personally taken in an island ravaged by the eye of Typhoon Rai in December 2021. The damages and the amount of disaster wastes for a small island was gargantuan. In fact, a greater volume was swept to the sea, and by this time, these wastes should be moving around our common waters. This situation highlights that the solid waste issue is transboundary and intergenerational, and without research-based solutions and policies, our current dilemma on solid waste management will worsen its ramifications on the future generations. We should continue to banner, therefore, from now on, to our different communities and nations, the vital concept of 3 Rs and circular economy towards sustainable solutions against plastic pollution and effective improvement of our mitigative and adaptive capacities to climate change. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to next year's 3 Rinks event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to hear that such young researcher have the strong motivation and direction on his work and the research as well. So I really hope to see you, all of you, to meet in this platform, 3 Links, in continuously. So last but not least, I'd like to invite Dr. Misuzu Asari from Kyoto University, who is mainly in charge of the organizing this event as a main person of the secretariat. So Dr. Asari, if you are ready, please start your speech. Okay, start.
Okay, so thank you very much, Ishigaki Sensei, and thank you very much everyone who attend 3 Links and also support 3 Links. So the one thing I have to say that your proceedings can be available on the website at least 1 month. So please don't miss to download your proceedings. And if you want to change very, very important points, please let us know. And also I have to say that the last student said we can meet next year. Yeah, hopefully we want to host with you next year or 2 years later as next 8th 3 links, online and also, if possible, on-site in Japan or in other countries. So if you want to invite us, if you want to invite our society to your country, yeah, please let us know. So finally, we have so many miscommunications or some delay for the information. So sorry for that, but we are very hard at hosting these 3 links. Today, it's very sad, but we have very big earthquake 2 days ago, and very hard partners in Tohoku University have many damages because of the earthquake. So at first we are so sorry for that kind of disaster, but yeah, we can share our experiences to go ahead. And finally, I also want to say very, very deep thanks to our staff. Here we have several staffs on Backyard. So yeah, of course, there are many members in all over Japan or world, but here is the main headquarters of this 3 Links Secretariat. So thank you very much, DT Center members. Thank you. And also Kyoto University student staff. Yeah, thank you very much. So Shigaki Sensei. So see you. Hopefully see you next year.
Next year.
Thank you. Shigaki Sensei, please.
Thank you very much, and very good and friendly circumstance and messages as well. So I don't have any words to add to Dr. Asari, but so this is a time to close this session and the 3 links, 3 links 2022 here now. So again, thank you very much for all participants and also for organizers and sponsors and collaborators, supporters to successfully operate and complete our activities in this time. So again, thank you very much, and keep in touch the information in the website and also email as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. And just one information, we will keep opening this Zoom link from now on a little bit. Maybe not in an hour, maybe. So if the person who wants to join here to talk about some other participants, please raise your hand, and so the organizer will pick you up to our Zoom link to talk each other. So again, thank you very much. I'd like to close this session. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. So if you can, if you want to join the Zoom to talk, yeah, please raise a hand and we will, you are the panelist. So Jang Sensei, thank you. Are you enjoying the vacances? あ、消えちゃった。
あさり先生、サンキュー。ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。大丈夫ですか？
いや、ちょっと研究室もかなりダメージを受けてます。酒井先生、どうもお世話様です。
いやいや、もう本当に大変ですね。もうなんか本当に3月は。
いや、こっちが去年も結構大きいのがあって、はい、立て続けに来てる状況なんですね。なので、ちょっと今回のはかなりやっぱ久しぶりにダメージが大きいという感じを受けてます。すいません、ちょっとクロージングちょっと聞きながら他の仕事をしながらという状況だったんで、ちょっとご挨拶の方十分にできなくて申し訳ありませんでした。ありがとうございました。ちょっと酒井先生からも宿題をいただいているので、
もうゆっくり。
ちょっとあとちょっと来週ですね、宮城県の環境審議会がありますので、そこでちょっと今回の対応どういうふうになっているのかっていうのはちょっと確認をしてみたいということと、どういう動きをされているのかというのは少し、はい、その辺精査していきたいというふうに思います。
はい、まずは身の回りを、はい、大切にしてください。はい、
ありがとうございます。
今の本当作業服姿が本当に臨場感が。
ごめん。ち ちょっとはい、なんか災害対策の本部が設置されちゃってて、はい、いろいろちょっと対応しないといけないことがあったもんですから、すみません、こんな格好で申し訳ありません。はい。
熊谷先生、斉藤先生も本当ありがとうございました。
すみません、あとじゃあ今日はここで、はい、失礼させていただきます。はい、どうもありがとうございます。
ありがとうございました。
はい、どうも。
失礼します。
ありがとうございました。失礼いたします。
熊谷先生、斉藤先生、お顔見せてくれるんですか？
お世話になっております。
どうも、はい。
お世話になりました。ありがとうございました。
大変な状況になりまして、本当にまた。熊谷先生もどうも本当。
お疲れ様です。
はい、最後の方お役に立てず。
いえ。
十分です。本当に大変だと思いますが。
そうですね。吉岡先生おっしゃった通り、結構揺れによるダメージで、実験室の装置がやられちゃってですね、ちょっとこれからいろいろそれのリストアップとかするのが、あれですね、気が重いですけど。
夜中でしたしね。
そうですね。怪我とかはなかったので、まずは、はい。
何よりです、それが。はい。
年度末の本当に大変な時に、はい、できることがあったら、お願いしください。
ありがとうございます。
お世話になりました。ありがとうございました。
はい、じゃあ失礼いたします。どうも。
失礼します。
すみません、私も失礼します。
はい、どうもお疲れ様でした。ありがとうございました。どうも。はい。
西谷先生もお疲れ様でした。ありがとうございました。
いや、すいません。もうちょっと今年は全くご協力できなくて、途中から本当にすいませんでした。
とんでもないです。ありがとうございます。またちょっと、はい、立て直して。
はい。で、実は秋の年会の国際セッションの開国の原稿募集とかが出まして、ちょっと終わってからまた相談しようかと思ってたんですけど、はい、ちょっとそんなタイミングになってますんで、
そうですね。
はい、またよろしくお願いいたします。
ありがとうございます。キアンさんが入ってますね。キアンさん、ティーさん、can you hear us? そのうち話すかな。矢野先生、石垣先生、矢野先生もちょっと最後のいろんな変更も含めてありがとうございました。
いえいえ、お疲れ様でした。ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。矢野先生もありがとうございます。はい。あれですかね、最後共有してもらったスライド、メールで飛んでたやつと一緒ですかね。
一緒です。はい。
じゃあちょっとまた報告とかに使わせてもらいます。
はい。了解です。
はい。ありがとうございます。
338っていうのは、トータル、どういう数、頭数としてのトータル。
延べ人数になりますね。
延べですか。
はい。各セッションに入っているズーム人を足していっているような感じです。
じゃあ2人が、1人が10セッションに入ったら、それは10で完了されてるわけですね。
そういうカウントの仕方になります。はい。
ただ、一般セッション結構、にぎわってたかなっていう印象でしたね。思いました。
はい。一般セッションの皆さん、お互い顔見えて、なかなかいい感じでしたね。
そんな感じがしまして。
スペシャルセッションを感情をちょっと上手にどう作るかというのも、次、工夫のしところかなというふうに思いました。
ありがとうございました。じゃあまたちょっと学会誌の分案内したいんですけど、あれですね、ちょっとだけ微修正してって感じになりますかね。またお願いしたらと思います。
はい、それから特集号の案内はもう今日送らせていただいたコールフォーペーパー、はい、ちょっと最後、ちょっとさっきも2022年を2021で間違えてたり、ちょっと何箇所かありましたけども、最後のコールフォーペーパーの紙はもうチェックいただいたら、はい、出していただいたらいいんじゃないかと思います。
はい。ワードっていうか縦書きの PDF だけの方がいいですかね。それともパワーポイントを修正して、それも添付しましょうか。どうしましょうか。
いや、パワーポイントはもう、丁寧に見た人だけで、1枚あれば、投稿には足りると思いますので、
じゃあ、あれで出して
あれはオープンされたらいいんじゃないですか。はい。
ありがとうございます。
はい。あと、ぜひ、スペシャルセッションからどっかいいのを
そうですよね。
はい。
ちょっとそれ
声掛けをしてみてください。はい。
はい、わかりました。
はい、それではちょっと私も、はい。
はい、ありがとうございました。
はい、はい。本当、事務局の、GT センターの方含めて、はい、本当ご苦労様でした。どうもありがとうございました。どうもはい、失礼します。
ありがとうございます。
失礼します。
ありがとうございます。じゃあ、クローズしていただいていいかと思います。